Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM, WSKB Westfield.
.806 and something, Kathy, right?
Oh, we don't have our other clock here. Oh, what are we going to do? I'm sorry, I'm going
Got to get up to the university to get it at some point in time.
I'm going home. I
The
can't.
big one's coming, the one I ordered, I showed you.
Today's the 29th day of October. I have candidate interviews today. However, I have a few minutes before we even get there.
Okie dokie. Uh-oh.
No, this isn't a monologue. I have been going out of my way, busting my ass to try to get every single thing that I possibly can on video regarding this election.
Mm-hmm. True.
At 7 p.m. last night, Kate Phelan at the Ward 4, 5, and 6 forum said to me, "Ken, you look tired." Fast forward 11 p.m. last night.
Wait.
I'm still trying to piece video together of that
We need
forum.
to mention this is all on your time.
Yeah.
On your
I'm
time.
getting paid dink for it.
As a
Right.
volunteer.
Right.
Using my own equipment that I pay for.
Right.
Except for the camera. So this camera records in 12-minute segments because they're very large files. It's like 4 gigabytes to each 12 minutes. So you end up after a night like last night with 8, 9 different files or clips that need to be joined together. Okay? I have to, because I don't have a high-powered computer, I have to convert the format from one format to another in order for me to work with it. So that takes time. And on a slow or a low-powered computer, everything takes time. Once they're in a format I can work with, I then have to join them together. And this is what the editing is, okay? For people who question, why do you even have to edit it? You have to put the clips together. Now, we paused for a 5-minute break in between each ward. I thought I'd put a nice transition and smooth it up, do a little fade, put some type of effort into it. And this is why it takes me till after 11 o'clock at night to get one of these things out as fast as possible. I could sit on it for a couple of days and take my time and do it. But last night, when I was putting all these files together, I missed file 7 of 8. And when you're quickly scanning through to make sure you got everything, especially with a static camera shot where the same people are sitting, you think you got it all. So, one person sent me a message and said, Ken, I think, something's wrong here. All right? Everyone else immediately on social media, you're censoring. You're crooked. You're one of them. No, it was human error. And I'm acknowledging it this morning on social media. I'm acknowledging it now. In the future, I am not going to rush to do any type of post-production to get something out within hours. I'm just not going to do it. Any of these people commenting that I'm censoring or that I suck, they know me enough to know that I am not biased in any way when it comes to this. But instead of sending me a message and saying, Ken, I think something's wrong, immediately now, I am the one that the dogs are going after on social media. They are now off my Christmas card list. No more niceties from me. If you can't be civil and figure out that, that's not something Ken would normally do. Let me message him. Maybe he doesn't know about it. End story. Pete, take me away. That's your cue to...
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Wednesday mornings start off right from 6 to 8 a.m. with Tina Gorman and Wake Up Wednesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Boy, Kathy, I'm kind of feeling sorry for the people coming in today after the morning I've had.
Well, I've had to listen to you, so it's their turn.
Okay.
It's okay.
Three candidate interviews today. We are starting off with city candidate, current Ward 3 candidate for at-large, Andrew Surprise. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, Ken.
Good morning.
Did you choose not to wear headphones?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Believe me, I've been watching, so I'm not going to tap the table either.
Good for you.
Good, because without headphones on, you wouldn't realize it. So we've done this before, and I know you, Kathy knows you, a lot of my viewers now know you, but maybe not everyone. So before we even get to the questions, I'm going to ask you, who is Andrew Surprise? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school, and what do you do?
Sure. Well, I grew up in Hungry Hill. I went to Our Lady of Hope School for 8 years and on Hungry Hill. And then I went to Cathedral freshman year. My parents moved us out of Springfield to East Long Meadow, and I graduated from East Long Meadow High School. Mm-hmm. I then took a year off between high school and college. Went to Stick when I came back. After Stick, I'd gotten into American University down in Washington, D.C., but unfortunately my family could not afford to send me there. Mm-hmm. And also I could not get enough grants and loans to cover the cost.
I hear ya.
So I ended up going to UMass for a semester. Did not like it. I didn't like the big theater classes. I like direct interaction, so I ended up transferring to Western New England College, and I graduated from there with a degree in political science. Mm-hmm. All right. And so that's after that, I went to work. During college, I was working in gas and electric industry, customer service, and then also in the insurance industry. I worked in Mass Mutual for some time, and also ended up as a quality assurance supervisor for a company that was actually handling all of the BP oil spill claims.
Okay.
So that was a fun time. That was about 80 hours a week. I was in charge of a team of about 100 people. Mm-hmm. And part of that job was, not only teaching them how to actually do customer service, but ensuring that, the job was done the right way, that, they were meeting the standards the company had for them. And actually at that time, we did have some people that were temporary workers that came in and thought they would game the system and started filing claims themselves. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't a good thing.
Nice.
But I did catch that. So, and also I've been a city councilor for 4 years, as you said, in Ward 3, and I serve as the vice president of Artworks Westfield.
Thank you. On to the questions. Why do you want to serve on the city council?
Well, I can tell you why I first ran in Ward 3 is I blew out a tire 2 years in a row, and I got sick of it, honestly. I could use worse language than that, but so that's what first drove me to run for council. And then also I'd worked on several campaigns for Don Humison for Dan Alley, and I'd been knocking doors in the city and talking to people across the city. And, there were certain key things, obviously, that I was aware of that were issues that it didn't look like people were dealing with, and that and the city side I'm talking about, in city government, relations to taxes, to roads, obviously, and then also to downtown development. That was one of the big ones when I first ran. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I wanted to do when I first got on council was downtown development. So that led me to discovering what I do is I look around the state, I look around New England, and look in cities that are revitalized their downtowns. And one thing they all had in common was a vibrant arts and cultural district, and so that was my main goal. And I came to discover that you couldn't do that without actually having events downtown. And WOW does some big events, but they do them sporadically throughout the year. They're they're not consistent. And in order to get that Arts and Cultural District designation from the state, which opens the city up to all kinds of grants and services, which can then help develop downtown, you have to show consistent events in a walkable area. And so that was one of the reasons that I was lucky enough to connect with other people like Bill Westerland, Cheryl Crow, and Tom Sawyer, and some of the other people on Artworks, and that had the same commitment to doing that. And so we now have events on a consistent basis all year long. And I think I've talked to Peter Miller, our community development director, recently, and he agrees that now's the time we should be applying for an official arts and cultural district.
All right. That's about it for the snowball questions, or the softball questions.
Well, snowball would work, but let's move along.
Yeah.
Andrew, you've heard these questions, so you know what's coming, but I'm going to read it as it is anyway, so we keep it all the same. How do you increase commercial and industrial development in town in order to reduce the residential tax burden when nobody wants anything in their backyard?
Sure. So one thing that I really commend Mayor Sullivan on having done was getting Myers Information Systems to move from a rental space in downtown Northampton to an actual permanent facility in downtown Westfield. That was not a small get. It is not a huge company, but it is a company that purchased and bought into Westfield, is investing here. They just renovated, and they're just opening now. They have 30 highly paid young professional employees. That's the type of people we want to see downtown. In order to get small companies like that, I am perfectly fine with allowing TIFs, which is tax increment financing, which is a tax break for a certain period of time, especially when you're first purchasing a property to renovate it. I'm not so much a big fan of the TIFs that we do for the huge companies like Home Depot. I don't think they need it. I don't think it's a huge enticement for them to come here. I think more market conditions, whether the market will sustain their business, is what drives them to come here. And then maintaining infrastructure is another big one. The fact that we don't maintain our roads, we have the 5th highest commercial property tax in the state. Businesses see that and say, well, how high are the taxes going to go? They're not maintaining the roads now. So that's another big issue. And then fixing zoning is a huge issue. I'm on Zoning Planning and Development Committee this year, and it's been 50 years since the city of Westfield's had a new master plan. It's literally been since the 300th anniversary. And that is one of the big issues, especially on the north side. We have the water contamination, and it's also the industrial and developing side of the city. It's really the only place we have that we can sustain large-scale development because there's so much open space up there. So what we need to do is change the type of development that's allowed there as opposed to straight industrial to something more environmentally friendly. I think more along the lines of technology, medical sector. And if you read the Westfield water quality reports every year that the water department puts out, it says right in their report that the state Mass DEP, Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, says that our aquifer is highly vulnerable to further contamination, and it's under the industrial side of the city, and there's concerns with the types of businesses that are there. So I think zoning is another key thing, and then maybe offering incentives to businesses to purchase property for renovation, unused, rehabbing properties, something like Bentley Billiards. I think there was some kind of deal with the back taxes on that. And then I think good old-fashioned shoe leather, actually going out, having the new mayor, whoever that may be, work with the council and having us all use our personal networks, our work networks, to actually find businesses to offer them incentives to come to Westfield.
Thank you.
Okay.
You started it on it a little bit, but this is where we get to it.
Yep.
What is your stance on the public water supply? Do you trust the carbon filtration, or do you want to see an alternate source of water use?
Okay. Well, I think I would like to see an alternate source of water, and I think there's several councilors who would like to see an alternate source of water. When we go back to when the first bond was rejected for the carbon filters, We made it clear, and I think there's a misnomer, or at least there's a rumor being spread, that we were against filtration altogether. If you go back and read any of the letters to the editor or go back and watch the videos from the council meetings, several of us wanted to put temporary filtration on wells 1 and 2, which are the lower contaminated wells that are further from Barnes Air Base. Well 7 and 8 actually, well 7 is in the top 0.5% of PFAS contamination in the entire country. So that tells you exactly how contaminated it is. It's about 10 times more contaminated than wells 1 and 2. And so we would like to see wells 7 and 8 shut down permanently, and wells 1 and 2 have temporary filtration, which we were fine doing. And we told the mayor at the time, if you would take 7 and 8 out of the bond, we would gladly pass it for you, because there were other things in that bond that needed to pass: water tanks, water piping. So there's that. But then also there's something that most people don't know is there's 300 separate PFAS, more than 300 separate PFAS chemicals in the AFFF aqueous film forming foam, firefighting foam that the military used, which is what contaminated our water. And the city only tests for 24 of those PFAS chemicals, and the state only regulates 5 currently. They're talking about regulating 6. Right now, we're under what they call the EPA's suggested lifetime health advisory for 70 parts per trillion, and this is what put us over the advisory level. The state is enforcing the advisory level, but also the state is looking at creating a maximum contaminant level on what they call an MCL, because the federal government has refused to do that, and that's an enforceable level. And they're looking at dropping it down to 20 parts per trillion. And what's likely to happen is those wells in 7 and 8, those filters are probably not going to be able to meet that 20 parts per trillion. There's been dozens of other communities all over the country who have used GAC filtration for PFAS, and I've talked to several of them, talked to the water directors and the mayors. And, I'll just give a brief list, but Pease, New Hampshire is one of the primary ones. But then also Ann Arbor, Michigan, they've had to expand their system several times, the change-outs of their carbon more frequently than they had intended, which is very costly. West Morgan and East Lawrence, Alabama, I talked to their water director. First thing he said to me is, don't bother using carbon filtration, doesn't filter out all the PFAS. Second thing he said to me is, I did a 20-year cost study, and over 20 years, it would cost us $94 million to maintain the carbon filters. And Westfield really couldn't afford even like a quarter of that cost. And if you look at the lawsuit that the city filed against the federal government and against the manufacturers, it actually says our costs are projected to be $65 million. Mm-hmm. So that's not a small amount of money, and that's people's water bills, and it's something that hurts people every day. Then you look at Fountain in Widefield, Colorado, which Chris Higgins, who's actually one of the scientists involved in the bench scale testing on our wells here in Westfield, actually put out studies, and he's involved in Fountain in Widefield, Colorado, about their GAC carbon filters, and he said that the PFAS, some of the PFAS is passing right through the filters. So there are big concerns regarding that. I'd also like to point out, we were able to get reimbursement from the federal government this year. I'm going to take a little bit of credit for that, and I want people to give Kristen Mello and Councilor Alley, Councilor Emershai, and Councilor Morganelli some credit for that, because I had been in touch with, when this first came up, Randy Chambers was Chief of Environmental Law for the National Guard Bureau. And he had advised me on language that needed to change in the federal laws in order to get reimbursement, because legally Air National Guard was not allowed to pay Westfield for the contamination. For whatever reason, DOD considered them to not be part of what they would call the CERCLA process. Mm-hmm. So I actually put Kristen Mello in touch with him, and he was able to get her exactly the language. And so working with the National PFAS Coalition, Senator Warren, Senator Markey, Congressman Neal's office, she was able to get that language into an omnibus bill that actually changed the language and allowed us to actually get reimbursement. And then secondly, I've gone down to Boston several times, half a dozen times at least, with Councilors Morganelli, Alley, Emershai, along with Kristen Mello of Raft, to advocate for help from the state and the federal government. And this past summer, our last interview, last time I was in the studio, we came to talk about a trip to Washington, D.C. that I took with Councilor Alley and Emmer Shai to go to a White House conference, but also to meet with our Congressman Neil McGovern, to actually advocate for them to help us speed up the circle process, help us speed up that reimbursement so that we can actually start covering our costs and we don't necessarily have to keep raising water rates.
All right, thank you. 8:29 and a half, according to at least one clock. Pete, underwriters, please.
Mike.
Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Dunkin' Donut Shops of Westfield and the Sardinia family. It's nice to know that even as the world changes, Dunkin' Coffee remains the same at 7 convenient locations throughout Westfield.
Underwriting is brought to you by Boise Cascade Distribution, providing products and services needed for building material dealers, home improvement centers, and industrial customers. They offer everything from engineered wood and plywood to Drex decking and railing, James Hardie siding, and Advantech subfloor. Located at 33 Fowler Street Extension in Westfield and on the web at bc.com, they are committed to providing quality products, great service, convenience, and value.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568-3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Wednesday mornings start off right from 6 to 8 a.m. with Tina Gorman and Wake Up Wednesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
And good morning, everyone. This is Kathy Palmer in with Ken Stomsky. This is Ken's Den, and this morning we are talking to some more candidates running for election. Please remember to vote. We have Andrew's surprise, and Andrew, we are up to the next question for you. What is your position on charter schools coming into the city, particularly in the Root Road area?
All right. Well, I dislike seeing private and public educations pitted against each other. I think they both have the same goals, educating kids. I'm not against choice. Charter schools offer different educational tracks, different opportunities, but we don't want to see the funds taken away from our public school system, and I think that's the biggest issue right now. That said, a lot of that's on the state. They need to obviously start funding some of these unfunded mandates and these requirements that they put on us. So when a charter school does come into the community, they really should offer additional funding. The answer on that would be I'm not necessarily against a charter school. It would just depend on, is it serving Westfield students? I think that's the primary goal, because if it's not serving primarily Westfield students and we're paying for it or partially paying for it, I am not a big fan of that. And then in that particular location up on Root Road, I'm not in favor of that location. It's right over our aquifer, as we just previously discussed. There's obviously that septic system was designed for a certain amount of people on that property. It's having a bioload that's larger than what it's allowed is going to be an issue regarding regulations, and then also we have to be very careful in what we're allowing to be developed over the aquifer, particularly in that area, because that's actually the clean area of the aquifer. It's an area where we actually could tap in new wells.
Okay. How do you increase money available for infrastructure, yet keep the schools, police, and fire departments properly funded without overtaxing the residents?
Okay. This one I'm always prepared for. Obviously, big part of that is advocating with the state for increased Chapter 90, which is our state road funding that we receive every year. We get about $1.2 million. And then Chapter 70, which is our school funding, because the school department is actually about 2/3 of our budget. And then primarily using funds for their intended purposes. And that's one of the big goals that I've had. And one thing we were able to accomplish this year was creating a road and sidewalk stabilization fund. It was a proposal of myself and Councilor Flaherty. And what that does, it's essentially a lockbox for money. So when you put money into it, you can't take it out unless it's used for roads and sidewalks. And you still need a supermajority vote of the city council, so you need 9 votes. And it has to be used for road and sidewalk projects. So, spending funds from the right pots as well. There's been issues in the past, especially with the building of the rail trail, where for about a decade, a lot of funds, about $4.5 million, were taking out of Chapter 90 state road funding and our local DPW budget to build that rail trail, when the entire time they could have been using Community Preservation Act funds, which is about 1% of everybody's property tax, to do that and use the road funds for roads. So using the funds in the appropriate place is exactly what needs to be done. And then lastly, I'll say zero-based budgeting is something that I proposed. I made 9 charter change proposals this year, or last year. Some of them got passed as resolutions this year. I'm bringing them back as charter changes if I'm lucky enough to be reelected. But essentially what that does is departments will go through a budget and justify every line in the budget, and it's not going to be based on a year-to-year budget increase or a level fund. It's going to be based on necessity. And so what I would like to see is every third year, a third of the departments have to do a zero-based budget.
Excellent, thank you. And we've got about 5 minutes to go for the next 2 questions, Kathy.
All righty. What issues do you have, if any, to making cuts to the school budget?
Okay. First thing that people need to know about this, and it's a touchy subject, obviously, it's education to kids. Council has no control over line items in the school budget. We can't tell the school department, we can't tell the school committee to make any cuts whatsoever on any particular item. We're given one number at the end of the year for the budget, and we're allowed to either pass it as is or cut it. The problem that we're running into is, frankly, if we're going to get our fiscal house in order, every single department's going to have to tighten their belt at least a little bit. And that means a few cuts here and there. And when we're talking about cuts, that's another misnomer. It's not an actual cut. It's a cut of the increase. The school department budget will never, ever go down. Most budgets won't. But the amount that we increase the budget can be reduced. And so when we're talking about budget cuts, it's actually budget reduction. So, a couple of ideas that I came up with regarding, and from talks with Stefan, our superintendent, and Ron Ricks, the CFO of schools, where can we save money is school bus waivers, transportation waivers. So if children aren't using the bus, their parents really should be asked, and it should be impressed upon them that if you're not using the buses, then please waive them, because it actually costs a lot of money for us to contract those buses. Then also... Special ed right now, and part of that is due to actually contracting out services because there's not enough special ed teachers available. But if we were to do more in-house, it would save money. And then also CPA funding for recreational projects. I know Councilor Emershire worked on this, was able to get a playground paid for at Abner Gibbs with CPA funding. And then also, which would save school funding. And then also potentially, moving CFO position from the school department into, if we were to create a city CFO, changing that position to a school budget manager and moving that into CFO department to actually start coordinating our spending between the city and school sides. And that's actually something the school department would have to agree to, the school committee. So those are some of the ideas I came up with.
All right. How do you start to control excess spending? Do we even have excess spending?
We absolutely have excess spending. I think I touched on a couple of those, but I can tell you, I was on Finance Committee last year, and they wanted to do pickleball courts, and I had nothing against pickleball courts. That's another misnomer. What I had, again, a problem with is we were trying to use an on-call contractor, which actually the original quote when it first came to finance when I was on it was $235,000. And so we saw no sense in using an on-call contractor, because if you just bid it out, you'll get a lower rate. That's completely obvious. You get a lower bid. So it ended up being $185,000. but that $185,000 was $100,000 out of free cash. And if people don't know what free cash is, it's just excess tax dollars at the end of the year that have gone unspent. And so that money can actually be used for anything. It could be put into the road stabilization fund and used for roads. And so things like that are another thing that community preservation should be funding. It's designed to cover recreational and historic projects. Some of the other things, the paving of Northwest Road, Sackett Road, it was wonderful they got paved, but they also had no stormwater installed, no real stormwater. And so what's going to end up happening is those roads are going to thaw and freeze, and they're going to break apart again within a matter of a few years, so that's just wasteful spending. If you're going to do a project, do it right the first time, even if it takes longer to do it, because you're not going to have to keep going back to pay money to fix it. And then also, long-term planning. I touched on zero-based budgets, but long-term planning, let's have a 5-year plan for the city so we know what's coming for the next 5 years. And if we need to make changes as we go along, we can make those changes, but at least we have a plan. And then also the way we do purchasing, some things that we have done, bulk purchasing, things that we need, and then also coordinating with other communities that are purchasing. So we recently purchased a fire truck a couple of years ago. We purchased that in a co-op with Houston, and actually saved us a lot of money doing that. Mm-hmm. And also the OPEB liability. If we start addressing that, we owe $230 million to our employees for retiree health care. That's what OPEB is. We have $800,000 in the account to cover it. And every year that liability goes up another 8%, and that's $18.4 million on the current $230 million. If we were to just take $250,000 per year and regularly make a plan, we would actually get a 4% interest rate discount, and our liability each year, that would stop growing $18 million. It would only grow $9 million. I say only, but that is an issue.
Okay.
All right. Ready for softball?
Yep.
Here it is. This is the question of the hour. Do you prefer Westfielder or Westfieldian?
Westfielder. I've used that word in my articles ever since I got on council. I think I used Westfieldian once, and I didn't like the sound of it after that.
Mm-hmm. For some reason, Westfieldian was out there, at least in the forum. You're from Westfield, blah blah blah.
Yep.
That's come up there. Have yet to see anyone who agrees with it. Andrew, surprise! It's 8:41. You have 3.5 minutes to get up on your soapbox and ask the fine citizens of Westfield for one of your votes.
All right. So, again, my name is Andrew Surprise. I'm the Ward 3 City Councilor. I'm running at large this year. I would appreciate your vote, and I do ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Some of the things I've done over the past 4 years I've been on council, we created a road stabilization fund to actually start funding our roads. Next year, I would hope that we will be able to dedicate the meals and roads hotel tax to those roads. That's another $1 million a year we can put into roads. I do have a plan for funding roads, another 1% of general fund. That's another $1.3 million, along with Chapter 90, another 1.2. We actually need to spend $5 million a year for 15 years, $75 million to fix our roads. So I actually do have plans, and I actually work to implement them. The same thing can be said of downtown Westfield. We're through artworks, through many of the businesses that are down there, we're starting to create pedestrian traffic. It's starting to come back, and I'm very excited what actually is happening down there. And a lot of people don't see it day to day, but as the Ward 3 councilor, I have. And the other things that I'm working on are recording all of our city meetings, because I think it's important that people at home can actually see what's going on. As Ward 3 councilor, I did a lot of city meetings, ward meetings, to inform people what's going on, also to just get feedback from people and to get information about what they have as concerns in their neighborhoods and in their community, in their immediate community, and take those back to the city hall and try to work on them. It's very important for us to actually know what's going on, or we can't fix the problems that exist. So those are the main things I've been working on. As I said, I'm always available and open to everybody. I'm happy to hear from you, and I would appreciate your vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Andrew Surprise. I'm taking a look. We got maybe a minute left.
Okay.
So idle chit-chat time.
All right. So let me just
well,
say,
it is an idle chit-chat, but tell us all where Ward 3 actually is.
Okay, so Ward 3 currently is the west side of Elm Street from the courthouse side, down Franklin Street, Russell Road to the Russell border, and down Western Ave to Stanley Park, including Stanley Park, but not including the college.
Mm-hmm. Half a downtown.
Yeah.
Right? One side of...
So it's a good ward. I get a mixed amount of business, business and residents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're ready for the big time now.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I ran at large, I thought we needed a couple of new counselors, and I was very supportive of Bridget Matthews-Kane, who is going to be the Ward 3 counselor. No one ran against her.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
And because I work with her closely in the hospital zone, and I know she's the type of person who will actually do research and ask questions, and I think we need more of that.
All right.
Excellent.
That brings us up to about our time. I want to thank you, Andrew Sparks, for coming in this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Appreciate all you do.
Good as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pete?
Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, and advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours.
Support for community radio on WSKB provided by Westfield Electroplating. Employing over 140 skilled platers, painters, and technicians, Westfield Electroplating was founded in 1946 and was the first company in the country to achieve National Aerospace and Defense Contractor Program accreditation, proudly maintaining that status for over a decade. Westfield Electroplating provides over 50 quality finishes to meet your corrosion, cosmetic, or performance needs. On the web at www.westfieldplating.com or 413-568 3716. Westfield Electroplating, putting the finishing touches on technology.
Wednesday mornings start off right from 6 to 8 a.m. with Tina Gorman and Wake Up Wednesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
It is 8:49, Kathy.
Is it a half or is it on the mark? Yeah,
pretty close.
You were on the mark.
And we're a third of the way through.
We are.
Coming up next is a candidate where last night she was looking at my camera, but my camera was looking in another direction. So even though she was looking at the camera, she wasn't looking into the lens apparently. Or, I'm still trying to figure out what was going on. But we have a candidate for Ward 4, Mary O'Connell.
Thank you for having me.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mary.
So I don't know if we've done this yet. I know I've had you on a few times, but before we even get into the questions, I want to know a little bit more about people. My viewers, my listeners want to know more. So where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And what do you do?
Okay, well, thanks for asking. Mm-hmm. So my family grew up in Westfield, Ward 4. I've always lived in Ward 4. My mom and dad were teachers in the Westfield school systems. My mom was an English teacher at the then South Middle, and she became eventually a guidance counselor down there. And my dad taught automotive in this very building. So it's kind of fun to be back here. I remember coming here as a kid, going into his shop, etc. So I had a pretty idyllic childhood living in Westfield, right by Stanley Park, hanging out in the park. Had Miss Noonan for kindergarten at Highland, and had a lot of lifelong friends. My best friend lived right next door to me on Granville Road, and I just saw her last week. We still stay in touch. So fast forward, I ended up going to Colgate University in upstate New York. I was fortunate enough to be in the first class of women, which was a pretty unique experience because that was a very much male-dominated university, and we were the experiment. So that was interesting, very challenging, but very rewarding. After college, I went to Boston. I worked in the insurance industry. I was an insurance adjuster, and I also, at the same time, got my master's at BU in urban planning. Then I left my idyllic job as an insurance adjuster that I loved. And by the way, when I left to come back to Westfield to start Lori Freight, my then husband kept saying, "How can you leave this job? You have a company car." And I thought, I know, I do have a company car. This is crazy. But I came back to Westfield, and my brother and I started Lori Freight System. And that turned out to go along pretty well. Mm-hmm. We were in business together for about 25 years. I eventually sold my share to my brother. He brought his two sons in, and they're still running the business in Westfield. Well, then along this time when I was growing the business, we had two children. I have a daughter, Abby, who is a corporate attorney in Boston, and our son, Marty, who lives in Westfield, and he has worked at Yankee Candle. He's in logistics, too. He works in the warehouse up there at Yankee Candle. So let me see, where are we now? Okay, so eventually I sold my share of my business. I went to work for a logistics consulting firm out of Hudson, Ohio for a while, traveled all over the country. The kind of job where I literally woke up every morning, and back then, not to date myself, but phone books, looked in the phone book to see where am I, because it was like, am I in Chicago or Tennessee today? Just like traveling like crazy, giving presentations all over the country. So that ended. That company unfortunately went out of business. It was in the .com years. Venture capitalist money funded it, and we blew through $25 million in a short amount of time, and the company imploded. So I was still in Westfield, and I decided to run for city council. I worked pretty closely with Barbara Sword. She had been encouraging me, and I guess you would say she was my mentor. We didn't agree on everything. She really hated trucks, and so that was a little awkward since I had owned a trucking company. But we came to resolution on most issues. So ran for city council successfully, and I served on the council for 12 years, 6 terms. And during that time, I prided myself on focusing in on constituent services, budget, and of course the ever-ending road repair infrastructure issues. Then 2 years ago, I felt I needed to step back, get a little perspective, which I think is always good for people to do. A lot of counselors have Chris Keefe, Morgan Ellie, Chris Crean, Donna Herman, actually, from going way back. So I took 2 years off. And at that time, as you know, Ken and I served on the Westfield 350 board. And that was pretty time consuming, probably more time consuming for you, but pretty time consuming all in all. And I just thought, well, I really can't do the job as city councilor justice and be on the board justice. I wanted to do it well. So I took this time off, and but the draw is still there to be on the council. And I think I have enough energy left and enough drive and desire to make some changes and look at some oversight. So I threw my hat back in the ring. And that's where we are now.
And we are a tad behind.
Okay.
You kind of started to get into it. Why do you want to serve on the city council?
Well, as I started to get into, I feel, boy, and I hate to use this word because I've heard others use it. It sounds a little trite, but public service. I really and truly like helping people. I get calls, and I'm still getting calls from constituents, former constituents, I should say. I love having people contact me with an issue, then working to try to solve that issue. And it's a very, very rewarding interaction. And I think I still, as I said, have a lot of energy left, and I'd like to continue that. I'm also concerned about our city budget. We've heard Dave Flaherty talk about the levy ceiling that we're going to hit probably 2-3 years, and I see spending that is maybe not absolutely necessary, and I see spending that is necessary. And I think I have a lot of common sense and an ability to analyze and look at what the old adage wants versus needs. And I'd like to continue that service. So that's pretty much it.
Okay.
How do you increase commercial and industrial development in town in order to reduce residential tax burden when nobody wants anything in their backyard?
Well, that's true. Nobody wants anything in their backyard. I mean, any single project. Going back years, in our ward, in Ward 4, we don't really have that problem too much in our backyard, but we have had it. Years ago, a state home was constructed right on Western Avenue, right across from Juniper Park. And I remember the neighbors were in an uproar. I was not in politics at that time, but it affects every neighborhood, the school down on Ashley Street, the industrial development on the north side. So what's the answer? Well, we need to have businesses come in. It's simple, pure and simple. We need to have that business commercial tax revenue in order to reduce our residential taxes. You can look at a town like Long Meadow, which has very little commercial. Their taxes are extremely high, so it's a balancing act. I traveled a lot in the South. We actually had an office in just north of Charlotte, North Carolina, when I owned Lorry Freight. And down there, they're very business friendly, but they do it in a way that they consider the needs and wants of residents. For example, they'll have special truck entrances off the highway. And for years, I've been a proponent of something like that in Westfield, a special truck route coming right off, maybe going off by where the G&E operations center is.
Is it not you?
I know you've been doing this for a while. There are ways to mitigate the effects on residents, but still encourage businesses. And I've always thought that would be an answer. I have letters going back to the 70s when I owned Lorry Freight, where I was writing to Al McKinnon, who at that time was head of the Mass Turnpike, proposing just this type of thing, and letters from him back and forth. So I think there are ways, but it's tough. Am I running over on this time, Kenny? Can I go a little bit more? Okay. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay.
I don't want to censor, but there is a finite amount of time.
I know. I want to have that 30 seconds to give my pitch at the end. So
We'll give it.
Well, we want you to have more than 30 seconds. Okay. That's why, yeah. 8:59 and a half, WSKB 89.5 FM Westfield. What is your stance on the public water supply? Do you trust the carbon filtration, or do you want to see an alternate source of water used?
No, I don't trust the carbon filtration system. I do not trust it. This is my take simplified. We got a bunch of crap in that water. I don't care what kind of filters you use. You can't filter out crap. And I've been to a lot of meetings. I've talked to a lot of the scientists. I've read a lot of studies from other communities. There are so many PFAS, hundreds, that we are not even testing for, that we know are in that water. So we're testing for some of them. The filters may pull out those that we are testing for now, short term. But I don't trust what's in there that's not being tested for or accounted for. If I believed in the GAC filters up there, I would not have authored the current petition asking for the city council to consider not turning on wells 7 and 8. I don't know if you've seen that, but we have 4,000 signatures on that already, asking that the city seek alternatives. And the alternatives, to me, is that another question, or can I get into that?
Go ahead.
The alternatives for me would be another well north of the contaminated zone. And I hate to bring this up because people hate it, and I don't love it either, but purchasing our water from another municipality. But I just feel like, what costs safe water? The other thing is the cost of these filters. The city's estimating, I've talked to the water department, they're estimating like $120,000 every 11 months. Talking to other communities, I'm estimating the cost of these filters over $600,000. Plus, the state hasn't even lowered their standards yet, which is coming. So the benchmark's going to be even lower. So no, I don't trust the GAC filters. I'm sorry.
Okay. What is your position on charter schools coming into the city, particularly in the Root Road area?
Okay, charter schools into the city. No, I don't like it. I don't like it, especially in that location. Well, first of all, the city has absolutely no control over charter schools. It's mandated by a state agency. So if the state authorized and permitted a charter school in Westfield, we would have to just suck it up and live with it. We really have no input. But having said that, I think charter schools do have a place. I know there's maybe a dozen in our general area. There's a Chinese immersion one. There's one in South Hadley in arts, in dance. And for the right student, it's wonderful. But as far as Westfield, those charter schools take money right out of the school's budget. And the budgets are so tight anyway. I hate to see that. And especially on Root Road, charter schools can be a money-making for-profit entity. And I believe that was more the motivation in that proposal, was probably dollar signs. So I'm pretty happy that it's not going in.
Excellent. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 questions left, and then your soapbox coming up, and we are just about at the halfway point. Pete, underwriters, please.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at rockies.com. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Comcast and Xfinity.com. Offering Xfinity TV, Internet, home phone, and home security services. Information on all that Xfinity has to offer in the Westfield area is available online at Xfinity.com.
Underwriting for WSKB's community radio programming is brought to you in part by R. Levesque Associates. They are offering landscape architecture, civil engineering, environmental permitting, and land surveying. RLA is a second-generation company devoted to excellence in the planning and design of outdoor spaces. On the web at rlaland.com or at 40 School Street in Westfield.
Wednesday mornings start off right from 6 to 8 a.m. with Tina Gorman and Wake Up Wednesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
9:05, we are back chatting with City Councilor candidate for Ward 4, Mary O'Connell. Where did we leave off? We left off with the charter schools, so it goes over to me. How do you increase money available for infrastructure, yet keep the schools, police, and fire departments properly funded without overtaxing the residents?
So you're asking the impossible questions this morning, basically.
They're not all going to be softballs.
Okay, darn it. Well, you do things such as when you have a meal tax, which I voted against, you have a meal tax that was promised to be put in a fund for roads. You commit to that and you use that meal tax for roads. That would help. That would go a little bit towards paving, infrastructure repairs. You do the old, be on top of it for the Chapter 90 money, any kind of federal funds. Those funds that we see paying for Western Avenue, those are mainly state funds. There's some federal funds that funnel into the state and then funnel into the project. You're on top of that. You have folks in City Hall that are good at that type of stuff, applying for for those type of funding. That's really the only way. I mean, we as a municipality could no more pay for all of that work up there on Western Avenue, the stormwater work, sidewalks, etc., on our own. We need help. So that would be my answer.
Okie dokie, good ones. What issues do you have, if any, to making cuts in the school budget?
Okay, I already said my parents were teachers, and they would come, right out of their graves if I touched that. In addition, we know that City Council can't cut line items on the school budget. I wish we were. I might be more motivated to cut some line items, but we can't. And every time council in the past has talked about cutting the budget, everybody's in an uproar. Oh, it's going to be special ed. It'll be, theater or whatever. So I have basically left that alone. I have a lot of trust in the superintendent, and I'm a personal fan of Tim O'Connor, who's on the school committee. I think the world of Tim, and I just think he's a great guy. He's got a great, smart head and mind. So I pretty much leave that alone.
Okay, Ken.
We're going to have time left over at the end now.
Oh, because I didn't go
Not
long
much.
enough on the school. I can talk more about the school issue. if you
Not
want.
much.
I don't like to cut the school budget, but
Here's one that you can really, really expand on, and I know you're good. I know you're able to. Sorry about that. How do you start to control excess spending? Or do you even think we have excess spending?
I think there's always excess spending. How do you start to control it? Well, first of all, our function in the city council is at the end of the day to cut. We can't generate, we can't allocate funds. So I think, again, I hate to use these cliches, but staying in good communication with department heads. When I was on the council, I met with department heads all the time: personnel, engineering, water, fire, police. So, for example, say water wants to buy another brand new Ford pickup truck, and they have a pickup truck that does the same exact thing that has maybe 4,000 miles on it. So we'll meet with them and say, do you really need this? This might not be a good way to spend your money. So it's the little things, and then it's the big things. So you basically exercise your oversight by communicating nicely and cordially with department heads. And of course, it's nice when councilors get along with their mayor and have those open lines of communication. Sometimes we're presented with a request for an item or a project, and we think, oh my gosh, this is like ridiculous. And then we sit down and we are educated and understand this, in fact, is something that's needed. So basically the old adage, communication, and you cut when you have to.
Mm-hmm.
My turn?
Hey, let's give her a softball.
Well, I don't think this is a softball. I think this is a very important issue.
It is very important.
It's my question.
And we're never, ever, ever going to think differently of you regardless of your answer.
Oh, yes, we will.
We will not judge you. We will never bring this up.
Okay, ever again, you promise?
That's not true. This question is so important. We want to know your opinion. Do you prefer Westfielder or Westfieldian?
Westfielder, absolutely.
Very quick.
I can't believe that.
No choice.
No one has chosen Westfieldian.
It's awkward, Westfieldian. But can I ask a question? Whose question is that?
I didn't do it.
Kenny?
Guilty as charged.
Okay. All right. I think it's nice to have a little levity, right?
Well, I did it just to lighten things up towards the end.
I like it.
Wait, I thought this was decision making.
It's also scientific because for 5 years on the Den, I've been trying to figure out officially is it Westfielder or Westfieldian.
I've never heard anybody say Westfieldian.
Yeah,
have you, Mary?
I've never heard that.
It's come up in my Facebook group. You're from Westfield, Mass. If you remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's come up in there.
Oh, it has. Okay.
Yeah, but thus far, nobody for Westfieldian. I have about 4 minutes before I get you on your soapbox. Did you want to revisit anything that we've gone over and enhance a little bit on what you think?
Well, the first question, why do you want to serve on the city council?
Sure, yeah.
When we get these questionnaires from the paper and during the forums and things, it always kind of boils down to you should, of course you're concerned with hundreds of things, but you really should sort of narrow it down to your top maybe 2 or 3 priorities. So I guess I'm getting into the soapbox issue a little bit, but my 3 priorities are the 3 issues that I feel are so important in Westfield is the budget, the water, and for Ward 4 infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So those are the areas of concentration for me. The other umbrella issue that encompasses them all is constituent services. From the moment I got on the council, I had my cell phone number published, my email published, my home phone. I'm one of those folks that have a landline, mm-hmm. and I get calls all the time. I get calls starting at 6 a.m. till maybe 10, 11 at night, and I think that's pretty important.
This isn't political when I ask this, so I'm able to get away with it.
Oh, go ahead.
Did you drive on Western Avenue to get here today?
I absolutely did not. And by the way, I, like many other folks up in Ward 4 just dropped $960 for a new axle and 2 new tires for my car. Absolutely not. I drive, if I have to go to, say, Noble Hospital or somewhere close, or Lathrop. I have friends that live in Lathrop. I drive all the way around.
You know, we relocated down here to the Tech Academy from the Ely building at the university just at the right time, didn't we?
No kidding. Oh my gosh, no kidding.
I think if I would have to deal with that every week, they'd probably have to find a new Tuesday morning host.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know what people who drive maybe little Mini Coopers or little small car sedans do. I have a pretty good sized car, but it's brutal. That drop off's about 18 inches.
It is.
Excuse me. 9:30ish or 9:14 and 30 seconds ish.
Ish. This is just not you with the ish.
I just did not get enough sleep last night because I was up doing something. But I'm not going to go there.
All right.
Let's
not go back to that.
No.
We're over it.
We have about 5 minutes now for your soapbox. This is where you get to look the camera in the eye, and you know which one is on you because I have a red tally light on them now.
Okay, just switch.
They'll switch without you knowing about it.
Is that Pete switching that back and forth?
That is Pete switching it back and forth, and you can actually see on the monitor here what is actually going out live on Channel 15.
Okay.
This is your opportunity to ask the great citizens of Westfield for one of their votes.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Thanks.
Mary.
Thank you. How much time do I have right now?
Oh, you have about 4 minutes.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to use up 30 seconds to just say this. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Kenny, for doing this. It's important, and I know it's like grueling. So thanks, I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it is.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Okay.
it is, Mary. It's
All right.
one of my favorite spots.
Oh, good. Okay. So I have to, I'm sure some folks are saying, why Mary O'Connell? I have to say, I commit, I will be honest and transparent. Since the first moment I entered the political arena, as I said, I published my phone number, email address, encouraging residents to contact me. I believe in the taping of all, and this, you may not agree with this, I believe in the taping of all subcommittee meetings. You do too. Good. I think that gives residents a clear idea of what's happening. I go a little further. Since day one on the council, I've proposed the taping of the G&E meetings. I think those should be taped too, but there's big pushback on that. I will. I'm not going to say there will be no tax increases because that's not a promise I can 100% keep, but I will promise to keep taxes and the fees as low as possible. I'll outside the box, like Dan Alley has a little think outside the box on his city council desk. For example, a few years back, a constituent was very agitated over the fact that we just disposed of styrofoam. If you have styrofoam from the packing from your Amazon shipments or whatever, throw it in the trash. She pushed and pushed and pushed. I researched companies that recycled styrofoam, communities that did that, found a couple companies. I worked with Joe Rouse from the health department, and right now up at the Twist Street landfill, there's a specific designated styrofoam collection section, which people, please, if you can, go up to the landfill and bring your styrofoam up there. As I alluded to earlier, I'll continue to work with department heads. I had pretty good relationships with most of them. As long as people understand you want to work collaboratively, you're not out for anyone's head. Another thing I did actively, which I don't see a lot of counselors doing, is I'll work very closely reviewing new proposed commission and board members. That's crucial. These boards are very, very important. I am happy that people step forward to volunteer, but we need to have the right people in those positions. There's some employee positions. Some are out of our control and authority, but there are employee positions for the city that we review. These have to also be given careful resolution and review. And getting back to the budget, I'll continue to be vigilant, watching over the budget and non-essential spending. And my big issue right now, the water, I'll continue to advocate for not legal, but clean and safe water. And I ask the voters of Ward 4, humbly ask the voters of Ward 4 to give me your support and your vote next Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you.
Kathy, do you have a ward question?
Yes, we do. We always like to know, Mary, for the people out there, because honestly, I'm going to tell you there are people in Westfield that don't even know what ward they're in, and I'm not being funny.
No, I
It's
know.
very true. So tell us exactly where your ward is.
Okay. If you start at Highland School and run down Granville Road, everything to the left, the southern side of Granville Road, all the way to the city border is Ward 4. Running down Granville, when you get to Stanley Park, run along Stanley Park, and now hop over the park. Everything from that area down on Western Avenue, north and south, is Ward 4. You all the way to the city line. Then you run down Western Avenue, take a right on Bates, and go down as if you're heading to Route 20. Thank you, Chris Keefe, because he was instrumental in redoing this in 2010. The last 3 houses on Bates Road are now Ward 3. There's a little street called Morningside.
Okay, I know where that is.
You know where that is. The southern side of Morningside is Ward 4. The northern side is not. So that basically encompasses the ward. Backing up from Highland School, can't forget this section, heading east, you have streets like Highland and all those little streets
St.
in there.
James.
Coolidge, all those streets in there, those are all Ward 4. Back it up to Mill Street. And everything on the western side of Mill Street.
Okay, Leonard Avenue.
Correct.
Vadnais.
Yep, all Ward 4.
A lot of miles of roads in Ward 4.
Right.
Mary O'Connell, I want to thank you for coming in this morning, candidate for Ward 4.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
All right. Pete?
Oh, suki, suki now. Hey! Come on, baby. Hey there, sugar dumplings. Let me tell you something, girl, I've been trying to say now. You look so sweet and you're so doggone fine. I just can't get you out of my mind. You become a sweet taste in my mouth now. And I want you to be my spouse, so that we can live happily now, in a great big old roomy house. And I know you're gonna groove me, baby. Oh yeah, now make me feel good inside. Come on and groove me, baby. I need you to groove me. Oh yeah, now, darling. Come on, come on. Hey there, sugar dumplings. Come on, give me something, girl, I've been needing for days. Yes, some good loving with plenty hugging. Ooh, you cute little thing, you. Girl, between you and me now, we don't need no company. No other man, no other girl can enter into our
Underwriting for WSKB's community radio programming is brought to you in part by R. Levesque Associates. They are offering landscape architecture, civil engineering, environmental permitting, and land surveying. RLA is a second-generation company devoted to excellence in the planning and design of outdoor spaces. On the web at rlaland.com or at 40 School Street in Westfield.
Wednesday mornings start off right from 6 to 8 a.m. with Tina Gorman and Wake Up Wednesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
Look at that, Kathy, 9:24 and a half.
I'm so proud of you. We finally did it. Congratulations.
Yeah, which means I'm doing a real good job staying on time here.
I know. It's been tough.
Because I am, in fact, fairly imbalanced. All right? I try to be equal to everyone.
You are balanced, not imbalanced. You're balanced.
Box of Westfield?
Something like that.
We do try to keep it even. We try to keep the times even because, as Ken will tell you, someone will complain.
Well, you gave Emerson an extra minute. That's not fair. You're biased.
We're 10 seconds into my time.
And I know that, and I'm going to make up for it at the end.
It's 9:25.
We are at, this is my last candidate interview of the season. I enjoy doing them, but
we did.
It's been a month. I'm ready to go back to normal radio. Candidate incumbent for City Council at Large, Matt Emershai. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Ken,
Good morning,
Kathy,
Matt.
Pete, all of Westfield. Good morning.
Did you hear that noise in your headset?
I did.
Okay,
I
you know what
realized
that's
I shouldn't-
okay.
This high quality table we have.
Yeah, we're going to be upgrading to a wooden one soon.
Ooh.
Yeah. So we've done this before, but I might have new viewers or listeners, and they may not know you. So before we even get into the questions, I want to ask you who you are, okay? Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? And what do you do?
Well, I will say I'm far less nervous this time around than 2 years ago.
Definitely, yeah.
A whole lot less on edge. So my name is Matt Emershai. I essentially am a lifelong Westfield resident. My parents are both lifelong Westfield, grew up here. My parents separated when I was young. Ultimately, I ended up going to Northampton with my mother, went to Northampton schools, graduated Northampton High, ended up in Florida, going to school down there, ended up when I moved back in Westfield, and have been here on my own. Started my family with my wife Kelly, and we have 2 young boys, Gage and Blake, who keep me very busy. And I am a landlord, real estate investor here in town and surrounding communities.
Yeah, there's one more member of that family you didn't mention.
The dog?
Yes.
Simba.
Okay, thank you.
Can you guess who named him? Wasn't me.
Okay.
That was the son when he was 4.
I got to get back to this. I'm sorry about that.
No, we'll move on.
Why do you want to serve on the city council?
Great question. So 2 years ago, I was previously going to some meetings, being engaged as an active citizen in the city. What it came down to for me was the budget that was proposed had a 6.04% tax increase. I wasn't happy about it at that point. The entire council chambers was packed. There was residents into the halls on both sides. We spoke for a few hours before the council, telling them, control the spending. Enough is enough. And at that point, the next night when it came around, after everyone had left, they voted on a budget. They reduced a couple $100,000. I wasn't too happy about it, and I said, well, I'm going to run. If you're not going to listen to the residents, then I will run and replace one of you. So I started running in August and pulled the papers in July, ended up running in August, placed 4th out of 12, and the rest is history at this point.
Okay. Moving on to the next question, Matt. How do you increase commercial and industrial development in town in order to reduce the residential tax burden when nobody wants anything in their backyard?
Well, there's a few ways to look at this. The first being that the last time the city seriously evaluated where to put businesses, types of businesses, and everything was reviewed in the 1960s. That was done through the master plan, which was done before the 300th anniversary of the city, to give you some perspective on time here. So the city laid out a vision, their plan for where certain businesses should go. I do not think that it's necessarily cohesive with the community of today. I am on the Zoning Planning Development Committee, and that was actually one of the motions that I brought in, was for a review and a review of all zoning laws in the city and possible zoning changes. The other part of that would be the taxes. We need to control the spending. When you have the 5th highest commercial tax rate in the state, there's no conceivable way to make yourself attractive without offering TIFs and other incentives to these companies. We certainly have the gas and electric, which has some extremely competitive and beneficial rates for the businesses, but overall, they still factor in the taxes in everything. And especially with all of our conversations about taxes and the levy ceiling, and the way taxes overall have been increasing in the city, it doesn't send a message to these businesses who are looking to build out 5, 10, 15 years when they're going to lay out, millions or tens of millions of dollars to build a facility here and invest in a workforce, that they're not going to have costs that are going to continue to spiral out of control. So we need to stabilize our spending, which will ultimately stabilize the tax rates and attract the businesses.
Okay. Ken.
What is your stance on the public water supply? Do you trust the carbon filtration, or do you want to see an alternate source of water used instead?
Fabulous question. So I would love to see an alternative source of water. I was up at UMass yesterday with Councilor Surprise and Kristen Mello and a few others. One of the big things that was discussed was the effectiveness of these filters. Now, a week ago, we had 3 UMass researchers down at the Moose Lodge discussing the carbon filtration, the effectiveness, and the impacts, really covering the issues that the CDC could not get into at the intermediate school. That was the primary goal of having them there. Now, yesterday was more an educational, it was PFAS 101. So what is PFAS? What does it do? Here's what our researchers are doing. Here's what they're finding. And ultimately, it was interesting because one of the slides they provided was one of the PFAS compounds that is known to be in the foam, the AFFF, that was used up at the airport. That compound blows through the carbon in an incredibly short period of time. And we did ask them, they will be providing those slides for us. So it will be posted up on Facebook and available for residents to review. But one of the things there is that water, the foam, I should say, back up. The foam, we know from the UMass researchers, has over 300 PFAS distinct compounds in that water. Mm-hmm. So we know that those compounds are there. The city's only testing for a couple dozen of them. One of them that the city has never tested for is that compound, for instance, that breaks through. So instead of just sitting here saying I oppose it, I certainly was a proponent of the temporary filtration. It was it was almost 3 years since the wells 7 and 8 were taken offline before temporary filtration was installed and brought online. One of the big things there was when I first got on council, I was put on the finance committee, and we had a $13 million bond brought before us. And we had to dig into the water issue. And that was one of the first things I proposed, was pushing for temporary filtration on well 2. I wanted it also on well 1, while we came up with a longer-term permanent solution that provided the cleanest possible water. And those would include Cabot Road. I was able to uncover a report that Geosphere back in the 1990s had broke down they tested the entire north side of the city to identify any potential well sites. They identified Cabot Road as the only place in the north side that had 2+ million gallon per day capability. So I took that information, I brought it out to Boston at a meeting with Councilor Surprise, former Councilor O'Connell, and Kristen Mello, presented this to Department of Health, EEA, DEP, and the governor's cabinet, and pretty much laid it out there saying, you guys are looking to put an industrial park on this site. So they weren't aware of that. Brought it to our water commissioners almost a year ago now. They requested the money. The council approved it. Geosphere still has not evaluated that site to redetermine the viability of it. The other option would be Ty Carmody, Holyoke Waterworks. That's a place that has the capability of 14+ million gallons per day. We have water lines running through the city. The cost to connect into that would be comparable to building one of our 2 filter facilities. Lastly on this, Rep. Velas was also up with us at UMass, and he proposed to the researchers, he said, say you're on an island and you have this PFAS, what would you do? Would you use the GAC? The first response was, well, yes. And I said, no. Rep. Velas, you're not getting off the hook. You're going to do the dirty work for us, since you asked the question. Say you are living in Westfield, and you have a location that has the potential for 2+ million gallons per day and is not contaminated. And you also have a neighboring community that has pipelines already installed running through your city and is willing to sell you clean water to the point where it doesn't even need to be filtered, just like the Quabbin. What would you do? Would you still go with the carbon? 8, maybe 10 researchers in the room, every single one of them said, absolutely go for the clean water. And so Rep. Velas asked them a couple questions, and they said, you would use the GAC as a last alternative. It's highly effective for most of the compounds, but if you have a clean water source available, you go for that first. And that's where I've been all along.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Moving along. What is your position on charter schools coming into the city, particularly in the Root Road area?
Well, the city council, really the city has little to no say in charter schools. That was one of the issues that was discussed when the one on Root Road was proposed, was within the state laws, a school is by right in many areas that you would or could otherwise just restrict zoning or the implementation of putting a school in there. So it's out of our lane. What I will say about Root Road area that really concerned me, because I was at the zoning planning development meetings, planning board meetings, where they were discussing this, was when their engineers presented the plans to the planning board. They said the aquifer starts at 14 feet. On average, our aquifer ranges from 40 feet to 200 feet deep. It's extremely shallow. Our pickup screens are 120 to 140 feet deep. There's not much separating the ground level from our water supply. So they were talking, it's 14 feet in that area. They were going to go down, put the leach field in 9 feet down. They were planning on leaving 5 feet from the leach field to our aquifer. which is simply, it's way too close. And that's the kind of stuff that poses problems for us with being beholden to these filters and everything else. So no, I am absolutely opposed to a school or any major development in that area that would put that portion of the aquifer at risk.
All right, we are about halfway through here. I've got 4 questions left, and then your footbox. It's 9:39. Pete, underwriters, please.
Underwriting for Community Radio on WSKB is brought to you in part by Rockies. Over 30 convenient locations throughout Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, and Florida. One of the nation's largest ACE dealers. Expertise and great product selection in paint, hardware, lawn and garden. That's Rockies. Rock solid service since 1926. On the web at Rockies.com. Support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by Comcast and Xfinity.com, offering Xfinity TV, Internet, home phone, and home security services. Information on all that Xfinity has to offer in the Westfield area is available online at Xfinity.com.
Underwriting support for the community programming of WSKB is provided by the Greater Westfield Chamber of Commerce, the voice of business for the Greater Westfield communities. Informing, educating, advocating, the Chamber provides opportunities for members to make meaningful connections on local, regional, and state levels. For more information on the Chamber's many events, workshops, and programs, as well as the benefits of membership, visit westfieldbiz.org. The Chamber focuses on the most important economy, yours. Wednesday mornings start off right from 6 to 8 a.m. with Tina Gorman and Wake Up Wednesday.
Community Radio.
89.5 WSKB. Live from Studio 120 at Westfield Technical Academy, this is WCPC Channel 15 and 89.5 FM WSKB Westfield.
9:41 on the nose.
Look at that.
You were worried about that silence there.
I was.
Do I go? Does Kenny go? You just did the school, so it goes over to me. Matt, how do you increase money available for infrastructure, yet keep the schools, police, and fire departments properly funded without overtaxing the residents?
Boy, this is a good one. This will take a little bit of time.
They're not all softballs.
No, but this is one I'm well prepared for it. So especially my first year on the council, I was placed right on the finance committee. So within the first few months of being on the council, I was tasked with the city budget. This year, that budget's $134 million. So there's waste. I guess is the big thing. The city in the last few years has been averaging $5 million a year in free cash. That's money that either wasn't factored into the budget. We have excess revenues, whether it be meals tax, because the meal and hotel tax goes into the general fund. It could be people paying back taxes, back fees and whatnot owed to the city. Additional development that wasn't planned, monies that weren't spent is another one that we're budgeted for. But ultimately, we've been averaging $5 million a year. So that was a bone of contention with me this year, where we're taxing residents on all this money, but ultimately we don't need to budget all of that. And that's been one of the fights through the whole budget process this year. And as the mayor keeps coming back for his supplemental budgets, with some of this is you don't need that money up front. You can supplement it with the free cash instead of overtaxing and then coming up with a huge pile of money at the end. Now, there's things that I proposed at budget time that would probably make some people cringe. I mean, our law department, before the current city solicitor was there, we had one attorney. Now we have 4 full-time attorneys, a part-time half attorney. We have a paralegal in there. We have a secretary in there. Another one, I wanted to eliminate one of the attorneys. One of the other positions I said was back while Chief Camerata was our chief, and Mike McCabe was the captain, they created a second captain position. Well, that's a $154,000 a year position plus a vehicle that we didn't have before they added that position. And realistically, with the amount of lieutenants we have and sergeants we have, that those duties could be folded into lower ranks. For instance, now we have a lieutenant overseeing community policing, where up until a few years back, that was always the role of a sergeant. So simply, we can't afford the salaries in the positions that we're creating. Another one that I proposed was fire department. We have 4 groups of firefighters. Each group has its own deputy. We have 5 deputies. The 5th deputy isn't one that goes in and deals with the different groups. That's fire prevention. You go to a community like Springfield, that is a base entry-level firefighter, $50,000 to $60,000 a year, not a $140,000 a year position, going out to inspect smoke alarms when a home's being sold, going into the schools, talking to students and stuff like that. You don't need a senior officer to do something like that. And ultimately, as we create these layers and additional high-ranking positions, they're incredibly costly, but those are monies that could be freed up to be used for infrastructure projects without affecting the tax bills for the residents.
Okay, thank you. What issues do you have, if any, to making cuts to the school budget?
School budget. Well, for one, we really can't make cuts. We see one line item. So 257-page budget. The last page is Westfield Public Schools, and it's one number that we see. So this year, for instance, that budget increased by $2 million. One issue that I had with the school budget this year was the fact that, for one, it's ever increasing. Every single year it's going up by millions of dollars. There's no cutting per se. You may be talking about a reduction in the amount of increase that one sees. But one thing that really bothered me this year was, before the budget was even presented to the city council and we had voted on it, the school committee had already voted to take $45,000 and put it towards the playground at Highland School. Now, when Abner Gibbs was looking to do a little remodel addition to their playground, they reached out to the CFO of schools, they reached out to the mayor, they reached out to all the counselors. I contacted them back, worked with them to obtain $10,000 through CPA funding, the appropriate funding source, to add on and renovate their playscape. Now, to me, it's incredibly irresponsible to take $45,000 before you know what your budget is and put it towards a playground. Because say the council had adjusted that budget, or, we're told there's no fat in the budget. If there's no fat in the budget, how are you able to take $45,000 out of educational monies and put it towards a playground where CPA, there's $1 million sitting there. There's absolutely no reason we shouldn't have used that. So when I'm told, we can't touch the schools, we can't do this, we can't do that, it's irresponsible. I've been after the school committee for the last 2 years to offer waivers. Essentially what I want them to do is charge for busing, and I've told Ron Rick's school committee members, I don't care if it's $1. I'm not looking for a revenue generator here, but what I'm looking for is the avenue for parents to opt out. And one argument made against it was that there's many low-income families that wouldn't even have to pay that $1. And like I told them, I don't care about the dollar. This isn't a matter of revenue generating. You can't conceivably charge these parents enough money to cover the costs of that busing, where you can, if you have these waivers, and those low-income families, let them fill out a form that says, I'm a low-income family, And yes, I want the busing for free, or let them opt out. Let them not respond or not provide the money, and let it go to the point where we are able to reduce our number of buses. That's where we're going to save money. So we can't steer where the money goes or doesn't go within the school department, is the big thing. There's certainly some issues there. Others need to tackle where the spending is and rein some of it in. But I can point to the Highland School, because that one really bothers me.
Okay, you kind of started to get into this. Last question, and you have about 2 minutes or so for it. How do you control excess spending? All right, or do you even think we have excess spending?
Well, there's excess spending. When you end up with the free cash the way we do, when you, I should say it's more excess budgeting. We are spending extra money on positions that we don't need. There was the person in the mayor's office, I'm drawing a blank as to her community outreach or whatnot, position that was there that's been eliminated. There are positions throughout the city that could be eliminated and pared back, certainly to save some money. The excess spending's there. I mean, I've identified almost $4 million over the last 2 years in budget reductions, and none of them would impact immediate services that residents would see within the city.
Right on, right on. Time for a softball.
No, you keep saying this is soft. This is the utmost importance, and we will hold it against you. And you know it.
We will never bring this up. We'll never talk about it.
I've never been told that someone's going to hold something against me.
Westfielder or Westfieldian? Which one is your choice of nomenclature? Westfielder, Westfieldian?
It's pretty intense.
I told you.
Westfielder.
See? No one picks the other one. No one.
I think it's official.
Okay.
All right. Even with three more going on tomorrow, I think it's official. It's going to be Westfielder.
There you go, Matt.
9:51, Matt. You have 4 minutes to get up on your soapbox and plead to the great folks of Westfield as to why you deserve one of their votes.
Thank you. Well, I have worked extremely hard on the issues in the city, the water, transparency with recording of meetings. I ended up having to take the extraordinary step 2 meetings ago of recalling the meetings from committee because it was being sat on. Ultimately, the council decided to hold that over until after the election because they didn't want to vote on recording our own meetings. So I've pushed for greater transparency. I have been out there. The best part of the job really is the knocking on doors. It may seem crazy, but the residents have been great. No one has yelled at me or given me a hard time.
You haven't come by my house.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
So I was fully expecting, I've rocked the boat pretty hard, and I was expecting to see some pushback, maybe even some significant pushback, and there really hasn't been any. But I've been working on the issues, pushing money for roads. I pushed and advocated for Councilor Flaherty and Surprise's road stabilization fund and dedicating the revenue from the meals and hotel tax for that. Just in general, I mean, I think one great example would be yesterday going up to UMass, seeing the research facility up there, becoming more informed about that, going to Washington, D.C., meeting with the president's cabinet and members of Congress with Councilors Alley and Surprise. That was something that was done out of our pocket. We didn't need to do that. All members of the council were invited, and we were the ones who decided to go. And there's some really good conversations that have come from that. And I think some of that, even though others will say otherwise, some of the return of that $1.3 million from the federal government comes from establishing and building relationships like that otherwise we wouldn't have. And the residents need people who are going to advocate for them and go out there and get the job done, not just show up to a meeting, rubber stamp a budget or rubber stamp what they're being told to pass. We need independent thinkers there who are willing to say what needs to be said, and that's me. You have mail.
That's the second time today. Sorry about that. I should silence my device.
If I did that, you'd give me the finger.
You're just a finger.
So, and with that, I ask for your vote next Tuesday, November 5th.
Excellent. City Council candidate at large, Matt Emerscheid, thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you, Matt. Some good information. We appreciate it.
All right. I've got a few minutes left. Stay right there so things don't look awkward on camera. That's it, Kathy, for interviews here on Ken's Den. Next week, November 5th. Pete, I think you and I are doing some type of special live thing that day.
Yes, we will be doing election night coverage in city council chambers for the first time ever, I believe.
So we will have the news before Channel 22, before Channel 40, before Channel 3.
Yep.
If
you
you
can't
want
be there in city council chambers to hear the unveiling, you'll be able to hear it on Channel 15 live.
Go to Channel 15 live, watch for the returns there. If you don't have Comcast, westfieldtv.org, westfieldtv.org.
Do you want to reveal the host right now?
In a second.
Okay.
It is just our way of completing the whole election thing. I've been doing this for over a month now, and we're going to finish it with a live broadcast with the end of the actual election at City Hall.
Yep. So you can give the hosts out there.
No, go ahead.
So the hosts are going to be Dennis Akins and Mayor Brian Sullivan are going to be the hosts. They volunteered for it right off the bat, and I think it's going to be fun for them because they're both kind of political junkies like I am. So
and in a way, Brian will be able to congratulate his successor right then and there.
Absolutely. And any guests that want to pop in, I'm sure we can accommodate them. We're starting coverage at 6:30 and going till 8:30. That should pretty much give us the range of when our results come in fairly quickly. So I will also be putting that out to the local television stations so they can get their information from us. Thank you.
Sounds good.
How's that?
Yeah.
I'll be up at East Mountain.
Well, you can watch it on Channel 15 or stream it on the big screen up there.
And
we can always do that. We'll have the numbers before City Hall has the numbers.
And we do want everybody to vote.
And not to be the bearer of bad news. But
I'll have the certified numbers.
If you want the fastest numbers,
Well,
East Mountain Country Club.
We'll have the certified ones, though.
Just make sure you go out and vote, please, people. Make sure you do. I know people say, well, I don't like this one. I don't like that one. I like this one, and that one. We don't care who you like. Just go out and vote.
You don't have to vote for all of them.
No, you don't.
Number 7.
Number 7. I saw that.
I saw that. I like the meme for the write-in for Ken Stomsky. I like that. That's hilarious.
Totally.
Let's get him elected.
No,
Don't
no,
even say
no.
that.
Let's not get me
Don't
elected.
even
Sticker write-in campaign
Oh,
we have
all
going
right.
on here.
All right, everyone.
It'd be the first successful one in my history.
So
Ken's
next
getting
week,
red here.
So next week, November 5th, we do have that live broadcast at night. The Den, I don't have any guests lined up. We are going to talk about the election a little bit, but I'm certain that we're going to be talking about the misadventures of the Pete and Kenny trip down to Virginia. I'm looking right into the control room right now.
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah, he's experienced it before. You've heard about it before.
I have.
Yeah, that's all happening.
We'll be live coverage on a Saturday. We'll have to preempt a little bit of polka.
Yeah, but that's coming up tomorrow on Tina's program. Matt Van Hannigan, Rudy Mustrate, and Dave Flaherty, and that will be the end of her candidate interviews. Tomorrow, or tonight at Dever Hall, Dever. See, I always go for that Denver. It sounds like Denver. The mayoral candidate will be up there. Ray Herschel will be moderating it. We're also recording that. Tomorrow night, back here at the Tech Academy, up at the upper campus, will be the at-large forum where we'll see Matt again. That is also being recorded, and then we are done with all of it.
Will it be a complete recording?
Oh, that hurts. That hurts.
All of my recordings are complete. I I just fall asleep halfway
really
through editing
quickly,
them.
though, really quickly for the people out there listening, tell them what at-large really is, because honestly, there are people that don't know.
So the city is comprised of 7 at-large councilors and 6 wards. Each ward has 1 representative from each area to make sure that there's representation of their portion of the city. But the 7 of us at large we represent everyone, and anyone who contacts us from anywhere in the city can work with us to get something resolved. And generally what we'll do is we'll bring in the ward counselor on the issue.
See, you think we assume, those of us who have pay attention, we assume people know that. But there are people, I'm sure, that do not.
And it gives us a total of 13, which makes it nice and easy to figure things out.
And even at the doors, I mean, there are people that do not understand what an at-large is, and you have to kind of explain the difference between the two there. And really what it works out to is the ward representatives have a easier run initially, and the at-large counselors have a whole lot more work cut out for themselves.
You have to be known by everyone.
By everyone.
As opposed
and then,
to your ward.
Because it's a whole lot easier to just hit all the doors in a ward versus citywide. And then you have, once you're elected, the ward counselors tend to get a lot more calls than the at-large. So it flips there.
And I am up against the clock because Kathy never looks at the clock. That's all I have time for. You did it, Kathy. Bye-bye.
Bombadita, 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 bombadita,
until
bombadita,
we meet
bombadita,
again.
bombadita,
Happy trails to you.
bombadita, bombadita,
Keep smiling until then.
Who cares about the clouds when we're together? Just sing a song and think about sunny weather.
Happy trails to you till we meet again.